I consider myself one lucky son, and from a long line of lucky sons. See, what I mean is, throughout the 200 years back, I can trace my paternal heritage. In each generation, there is a loving father present. It is remarkable and relatively rare that for 7 generations straight, the men of the Thierry family developed strong, positive relationships with their children, despite the constant challenges Black families have faced throughout American history. First, there was my great-great-great-great-great-grandfather, Louis Thierry, born in St. Landry Parish, Louisiana in 1770. The son of a slave woman and an unknown man, he married and had 13 children, one of whom was Alexander Thierry, who had Felix Thierry, who had Eloy Thierry, who moved to Galesburg, Illinois from Louisiana, and had Ollie Thierry Sr., who had my grandfather, Ollie Thierry Jr., who had my father, Ollie Thierry III, who in partnership with my mother Trudy created me, Jordan, and then my little brother, Nick. That's me and my pops. As a kid, I knew I was lucky because of the active relationship I had with my dad. For us, it was always basketball. Through playing hoop, my dad taught me the values of hard work, integrity, generosity, and dedication. I'm sure I'm not the only one who can say that through basketball or some other sport, my dad, my brother, and I spent most of our time. But when it came to other Black kids in my area, I noticed their fathers weren't around like mine. And being around different ethnicities growing up, I noticed the racial distinction among kids I went to school with, played ball with, saw on television, and knew within my own family. As an adult, still not having this phenomenon explained to me, I decided to find an explanation through speaking with some of my elders and respected scholars of Black history and the family. I wanted to record my conversations to share with others by producing this documentary, The Black Fatherhood Project. Let's start by looking at fatherhood in Africa, before the colonization, the kidnapping, the trading, and the purchasing of human beings. I want to know how fatherhood existed on the motherland before foreign interruption.
When I look at Africa as a cultural linguistic data set, what I see is that there are about 4 to 5 major cultural linguistic regions that make up all of Africa. Pre-colonial invasion, pre-enslavement. And that those 4 or 5 linguistic cultural regions are the one that is the largest is called the Bantu Congo. And that most of our people, most of us, I would even dare say that 100% of all the Africans in the diaspora, the New World, came from one of the subsets of the Bantu Congo people. All right? So we are all one family. We're all Bantu, or we're all Congo. And that common root in terms of parenting, it seems to me, is that we, African people, believe that we come to the world with a mission. Coming from the spiritual realm into the visible realm or the material realm, we forget what our purpose was. And so you have to educate new human beings to be human and to recall what their purpose is. So all the socialization, all the parenting and African traditions, when you look at them, the core theme is developing and bringing out of you that God-given gift that you came to the world to fulfill.
In the African dynamic, fatherhood doesn't stand alone. It is part of a socialization structure, and it's not even the center of that structure, okay? So if you go back into history, the African history, African pre-Christian, you're gonna be dealing with a socialization process that is the center is the woman, okay? Because of course all of us pass through a woman.
The woman is the channel through which her sacred womb, new life comes. So she's more paramount. She's more primary in this duality of divinity.
fatherhood is not a question of a singular person who has the genetic, material for this particular child or children. It's that group that was socialized together that maintains that relationship that is now responsible for raising this group of children and staying with them and making sure they get protected and supported. So that if somebody dies or something, things didn't change.
My job as a man in my community is to raise, to direct, to counsel, to nurture all children, whether they're my biological children or not.
So when we get to that phrase we use now, it takes a village to raise a child. We understand that phrase in one way, but it's a different phrase when you're actually living in a village and you've actually gone through this process of socialization. What it means to you is much different than what it means to us, right? We're trying to say, let's all help and contribute where we have no obligation to do so, right? Because it's just our will to do so. Your will and your training is much different. So when the mother has a kid, certainly the mother is the one that's raising the child, along with perhaps the other women in the social group, sisters, right, neighbors, right? They're raising the infant, okay? When the infant male becomes reaching adolescence, now the men of the community come into play, and they at some point will take the boy for training, which means helping that boy determine his role in the community as a male. What is his responsibility in that community? What are the expectations of him to play in that community, right? So it's the men that's going to teach him what that is. So the young girl who's raised, when she reaches adolescence, the women, of course, will take her and begin to train her as her role in the community as she reaches adulthood.
The rite of passage really was a signifier of achievement. And so when you have mastered some level of confidence, some level of competence, and some level of consciousness, and I'm saying levels, then the community made judgment on you. And based upon the judgment on you, the community, your family, the community, gave you the right to pass on to the next level of the path, because you're on a path. And so when I'm a 5-year-old, I go through a rite of passage, because now I'm entering into pre-adolescence where there are going to be greater challenges that I have to meet, you see? So rite of passage was not a process, it was a signifier of a point in a process.
Now, different societies would do different initiation rituals, markings and circumcisions or cuts, or there's a lot of different, because there's a lot of societies in Africa, and it's not at all monolithic. But the general consensus is the socialization of that child.
Traditional family forms that we have to rescue. We have to study them, and we have to be very careful, because even Africa as a geographical space has been contaminated, because colonialism did the same damage to continental Africans that enslavement did to diasporic Africans.
In West Africa particularly, the concept was the extended family. And obviously slavery broke that up in terms of bringing Africans here. Whole families were not brought together. But there was a tradition for the extended family. And so even within the system of slavery, there were usually black males who would take on the role of the father figure and provide as much as possible some security and safety for the children. And so this was a way for black men to be involved with their families.
That African spirit, if I can use that language, really was the very thing that allowed us to be on a plantation, to have children, to have semblance of a family, and that be totally disrupted by the whim and will of some vulgar masters. We still had a sense of, that's my child. And that wasn't broken. I think the idea that you my child, that you my man, that you my woman, all that kind of emphasis on belonging, not as ownership, but belonging as proper connection. Like my hand belongs on my arm, my eyes belong in my head. That's the kind of belonging we had. It was never ownership. Now what slavery tried to do was to translate our meaning of belonging to their meaning of belonging, which was chattel ownership. And so that's the struggle we've had, because we're internalizing their meanings of things.